The universe was old, older than the stars, older than time as mortals knew it. And hidden within its vastness were the echoes of forgotten wars, conflicts fought not with weapons, but with the fabric of creation itself. One such war ended when a god fell. His body, broken and burning, tumbled to the void, bleeding divinity. His wounds poured ichor into the nothingness, crystallizing into shattered fragments of power. His enemies pursued, relentless and unyielding, but he had one last gambit. He found a barren rock, a world devoid of life, void of promise. In his final moments, he reached deep into the essence of existence and bled his own soul into the world. His death ignited a spark. His remains sank into the lifeless soil, and from them life was born. A death world, a world teeming with creatures that clawed their way to survival, that fought for every breath, every moment, every inch of existence. A world where the weak perished and the strong adapted. And now, eons later, that world had given rise to its apex creation, humanity. They knew nothing of their true origins. Not yet, but something ancient did, and it was coming. Captain Aidan Graves exhaled slowly as the reports poured onto his hollow display. The UEG's Deep Space Exploration Corps had detected something, an anomaly on the fringes of the solar system. The kind of anomaly that made seasoned officers uneasy. Unidentified gravitational disturbance detected near the Oort cloud, the AI reported. Spectral analysis suggests an unknown form of exotic matter. Aidan narrowed his eyes. Show me the readings. The display shifted and he frowned. The data was wrong. The gravity fluctuations didn't match any known celestial body. No rogue planets. No collapsing stars. It pulsed, almost like a heartbeat. A cold weight settled in Aidan's gut. Something about it was familiar, instinctual. Get me a direct link to command. He ordered. He didn't know why. But every cell in his body screamed that something was about to change, and that humanity was about to learn a truth it wasn't ready for. Deep beneath the ice of Europa, Dr. Lynn Calder stood motionless, staring at the impossible. The dig had begun as a simple research expedition. Scientists had theorized that Europa's subsurface ocean might contain microbial life. But what they had found instead defied every known law of biology. Suspended in the water, untouched by time, was a structure, not a ruin, a body. It was enormous, easily the size of a city, and it was not human. Lynn swallowed, activating her wrist calm. Called her to control. We found something. Define something. She hesitated. It's organic. A long silence followed. Then a single word. Secure the site. Reinforcements inbound. But Lynn wasn't sure if reinforcements would be enough. Because as she stared at the massive form, she could swear she saw something move. A flicker of golden light, like blood stirring in frozen veins. Something was waking up. The fleet came without warning. They arrived in silence, their ships drifting into the system like predators stalking prey. No warnings, no demands. Only a single transmission, broadcasted across every channel, in a language humanity had never heard, yet somehow understood. The last of the blood stirs, the hunt resumes, and then the attacks began. Orbital defenses crumbled. Mars colonies went dark within hours. Earth's military scrambled, their weapons barely scratching the black hulls of the invaders' warships. The invaders moved with terrifying efficiency. They did not conquer. They did not communicate. They only destroyed. And in the chaos, something else stirred. Aidan barely made it out of the assault on Titan. His ship, the Vanguard, was one of the few that had survived the first onslaught. They had no idea who they were fighting. No demands. No mercy. Just extermination. He clenched his fists, staring at the holographic wreckage of what had been Earth's outer colonies. We need answers. Now. We might have them. Lynn's voice came through the comms. She sounded shaken. I need you to see something. The feed shifted, and Aidan felt his blood run cold. The body beneath Europa. It was no corpse. It was healing. Golden veins pulsed beneath the ice. And then, as if sensing his gaze, its eyes opened. They were human. It was not a singular entity. It was a vessel, a remnant of something far older than humanity, yet deeply intertwined with it. And when it finally spoke, it was with a voice that echoed in Aiden's mind, in Lynn's, in every human across the system. My blood endures. Memories flooded into them, not their own, but something ancient. A war fought in the fabric of the cosmos. A god who had defied extinction, who had given his last breath to birth something new. Humans were not his creations. They were his heirs. His blood still ran in their veins, and that blood was waking up. The first to change was Lynn. She barely had time to react before the pain hit, searing through her like fire. Her body twisted, muscles locking, as something else took hold inside her. She saw everything. The gods fall, the enemies that hunted him, the reason Earth had been left untouched by the galactic community for so long. Fear, because they had always known, knew that if humanity ever remembered what they were, nothing could stop them. And now it was too late. Lynn collapsed, gasping. When she looked up at her hands, golden light pulsed beneath her skin. She wasn't alone. Across the fleet, across the colonies, across Earth itself, humanity was awakening. Their blood remembered. And the hunt was no longer one-sided. The invaders realized their mistake too late. For millennia, they had ensured that the god's legacy remained buried, that his bloodline would never rise. They had failed. Aiden stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, his mind alight with newfound power, his eyes burning with golden light. He could feel them, every human, every pulse of divine energy waking in his people. They were not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for their birthright. And for the first time in eons, the hunters felt fear, because the last of the gods' blood had finally remembered what they were, and they would never be prey again. The first counterattack was uncoordinated, chaotic, humans across the system acting on instinct rather than strategy. But instinct was enough. Aiden felt a surge of something ancient awakening in his veins, like an ember catching fire. He didn't need a command console anymore. He could feel the Vanguard, sense its structure as if it were an extension of his body. When the next enemy barrage streaked toward them, he reached out, not with his hands, but with his will. The golden light in his veins flared. The missiles stopped mid-flight. Then, with a flick of his mind, they reversed course, screaming back toward the enemy ships that had launched them. Explosions rippled across the void. The bridge crew stared in stunned silence. Aiden turned to them, his voice steady. Send word to every ship. We are not defenseless anymore. No one questioned it, because across the fleet, others were discovering the same thing. Pilots who suddenly felt the movements of their ships before their hands even touched the controls. Soldiers whose bodies reacted faster than thought. Civilians whose fear turned into resolve. Their minds latching onto something primal, something woven into their very DNA. The god's blood had awakened, and it was hungry. Lynn had barely managed to pull herself out of the ice caverns before her body gave in to the change. The Europa research station was in chaos, scientists collapsing as golden veins traced patterns beneath their skin, their bodies convulsing with sudden understanding. The god's memory was flowing through them. They could see what had come before. Lynn gasped as her vision split. One foot in the present, the other in the dying god's final moments. She saw the enemy ships circling above, but now she understood them. They were the extinguishers, the ones who had wiped out the god's kind, the ones who had hunted him across galaxies, determined to erase every trace of his existence. And they knew, they had always known that Earth was his final resting place. They had watched, waited, ensured humanity never reached beyond its cradle, never awakened the power that now coursed through them. But they had failed. Lynn rose to her feet, golden light rippling through her skin like liquid fire. She reached out. The research station security turrets, inert and offline for weeks, hummed to life, not with technology, but with will. Lynn's will. She turned to the terrified researchers. Get underground. Now, she wasn't human anymore. She was something more. Earth's skies burned. The enemy ships had descended, their forces deploying onto the surface with cold, mechanical precision. But they had miscalculated. They had expected conquest, extermination. What they had found was war. Across the planet, humans changed. A soldier on the front lines found his wounds knitting shut as soon as they formed, the bullets in his rifle turning molten with every shot. A mother shielding her child felt the air around her harden, turning into an invisible barrier that deflected the enemy's plasma fire. A hacker, once helpless behind a screen, suddenly understood the enemy's systems, not through code, but through thought, reaching into their machines as if they were mere extensions of his own mind. The world was no longer theirs to conquer. It was fighting back. And for the first time in history, the extinguishers hesitated. The vanguard carved through the enemy fleet, a storm of golden light weaving through the darkness. Aiden was no longer just a man. He was well-made, manifest. He didn't just command the ship. He was a ship. His body pulsed with power as he directed its weapons, not through buttons or controls, but through thought. Energy cannons twisted in mid-fire, arcing around enemy shields before striking their unprotected flanks. Plasma bolts hung in the void before reversing course, slamming back into the ships that had fired them. The extinguishers were learning what true fear felt like. Their weapons had been built to destroy civilizations, but they had never faced a civilization that could evolve mid-battle, that could rewrite the rules of war. Aiden's voice echoed across the comms. They wanted to erase us. Now we erase them. And humanity's first true battle among the stars became a massacre. Lynn stood atop the ruins of the Europa station, golden light still flickering along her skin. She could feel them, every human across the system, every pulse of divine power waking inside them. She felt Aiden at the edge of the solar system, his presence a beacon of raw will. She felt the soldiers on Earth, the defenders on Mars, the survivors on Titan. And she felt something else, something deeper, a voice. No, not a voice, a presence, something ancient, something that had been sleeping for longer than the god himself, something that had been watching. The awakening of the god's blood had sent ripples across the galaxy, and those ripples had reached places even the extinguishers had feared. Lynn exhaled slowly. We're not done yet, because the war was no longer about Earth. It was about everything. And somewhere in the void, something else had just taken notice.